My name is Claire Whitfield, and 3 weeks ago, I thought I had a perfect life. A beautiful house in Denver, a 14-year marriage to a man named Richard, and a trip to Hawaii that was supposed to celebrate our anniversary. I should have known something was wrong the moment Richard started acting strange. For the past month, he'd been distant. Late nights at the office. Phone calls he took in the bathroom with the door locked. Whispers I wasn't supposed to hear. I told myself it was just work stress. 14 years of marriage teaches you to make excuses for the person you love, even when your gut is screaming at you not to. The morning of our flight, Richard seemed unusually helpful. Too helpful. "Don't worry about packing, Claire," he said, kissing my forehead like everything was normal. "I already got your suitcase ready. I added a few things. Your favorite perfume. That scarf you love. Just relax, babe." I remember smiling at him, thinking, maybe he's trying to make up for being distant. I had no idea that smile would almost destroy me. We arrived at Denver International Airport 2 hours early. Richard's secretary, Megan Foster, was also flying out that same morning, apparently for a work conference in Honolulu. What a coincidence, right? Richard insisted we all share a cab to the airport since our flights left around the same time. I thought nothing of it. Megan was 26, always polished, always smiling a little too brightly whenever Richard walked into a room. But I trusted my husband. God, I trusted him so much. At the security checkpoint, everything changed. I placed my suitcase on the conveyor belt, just like I'd done 100 times before. Richard stood beside me, unusually tense, glancing at his phone, then at the X-ray machine, then back at his phone. His jaw was clenched so tight I could see a vein pulse in his neck. "Ma'am, can you step aside, please?" A TSA officer's voice cut through the noise. "We need to do an additional check on this bag." My stomach dropped. "What's wrong?" I asked, genuinely confused. The officer didn't answer right away. Two more agents appeared. They opened my suitcase on the table, and that's when I saw it, a small, vacuum-sealed bag tucked beneath my clothes. White powder. My heart stopped. "Ma'am, do you know what this is?" I don't. That's not mine." My voice cracked. I looked at Richard, expecting him to defend me, to say something, anything. But his face had gone pale. He wasn't looking at the bag. He was staring at his phone, and for one terrifying second, I saw something flash across his expression. Relief. Not panic. Not confusion. Relief. That's when something inside me, call it instinct, call it a wife's intuition sharpened by years of unanswered questions, told me this wasn't a mistake. This was planned. And Richard knew exactly what was in that suitcase. But here's the thing nobody knows yet. Here's the part that changed everything. 2 days earlier, while Richard was in the shower, I'd seen him acting suspicious near our luggage in the closet. He'd been nervous, fumbling with something, shoving it deep into a side pocket of my suitcase before zipping it shut in a hurry. At the time, I assumed it was a surprise gift, a little anniversary present he didn't want me to find early. So that night, curious, and maybe a little paranoid after weeks of his secretive behavior, I unzipped that exact pocket while he was asleep, and what I found wasn't a gift. It was a small sealed plastic bag, hidden inside a rolled-up pair of socks. I didn't open it. I didn't even touch it much. But I recognized the shape, the weight, the way it had been hidden, deliberately, carefully, like someone trying to make sure it wouldn't be found until it was too late. My hands were shaking. My mind was racing. Why would Richard put something like this in my bag? I thought about confronting him right then. But something stopped me, a cold, clear voice in my head that said, "Don't react yet. Watch. Wait. Figure out why." So I did something that, looking back, may have been the smartest or craziest decision of my life. I took that bag, and the next morning, while Richard was in the shower again, I slipped into the guest room where Megan's suitcase sat, waiting to be picked up by the cab driver. Her bag was nearly identical to mine, same brand, same color, a coincidence Richard probably hadn't planned on. With trembling hands, I unzipped the side pocket of her suitcase and slid the bag inside, hidden exactly the way Richard had hidden it in mine. Then I went back to my room, zipped my own suitcase shut, and acted like nothing had happened. I had no idea, at that moment, whether I was doing the right thing. I just knew something was deeply, terribly wrong, and I wasn't going to be the one to take the fall for it. Now, standing at the security checkpoint, watching TSA agents pull a bag of white powder out of my suitcase, a bag I thought I had moved, my entire body went numb. Because that meant only one thing. There were two bags. Two identical bags. And Richard had planted not one, but two. I looked up at my husband, my voice barely above a whisper. Richard, what did you do? And then, across the terminal, I heard Megan scream. Megan's scream cut through the entire terminal like a siren. Heads turned. TSA agents on the other side of the checkpoint were now huddled around her suitcase too, and I watched in stunned silence as they pulled out an identical sealed bag of white powder from her luggage as well. For a moment, everything froze. Richard's eyes darted between my open suitcase, Megan's open suitcase, the agents, and finally me. And in that split second, I saw something I will never forget. Pure, naked terror. This isn't mine, Megan was shouting, her voice shaking, tears streaming down her face. I don't know how that got there. I swear, I've never seen that before in my life. The TSA agent in front of me was speaking, but his words felt like they were coming from underwater. Ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us for further questioning. Wait, I said, my voice surprisingly steady considering my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might explode. Wait, please. I think there's been some kind of mix-up. Can I explain something? The agent studied me. Go ahead. I took a deep breath. This was it. The moment where I either told the truth and exposed everything, or stayed quiet and let whatever Richard had planned play out. But looking at his face, pale and sweating despite the air conditioning, I knew I had to say something. Not the whole truth. Not yet. Just enough. 2 nights ago, I said slowly, I saw my husband hide something in my suitcase. I didn't know what it was at the time, but it looked suspicious, so I moved it. I put it in someone else's bag because I panicked. I didn't know it was drugs. I swear I didn't know. The agent's expression shifted. You're saying you tampered with another passenger's luggage? My voice caught. I didn't think it through. I just knew something was wrong and I didn't want it to be in my bag. Richard finally found his voice. Claire, what are you talking about? You're not making any sense. Don't, I snapped, turning to him with a fury I didn't know I had inside me. Don't you dare act confused right now, Richard. You hid something in my suitcase. I saw you do it. And now there's a second bag, in her suitcase. I pointed at Megan, who looked like she might pass out. So either you're working with her, or you're setting both of us up. Which one is it? The terminal went dead silent except for the murmur of confused passengers and airport announcements droning on in the background. Megan's face went through about 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. Confusion, fear, and then something else. Recognition. Richard, she said quietly, almost to herself. You said this trip would be different. You said we'd finally. She stopped herself, eyes widening as she realized what she just revealed in front of a security checkpoint in front of me. In front of everyone. There it was. The confirmation I didn't even know I'd been bracing for. Oh my God, I whispered. The pieces slammed together so violently I felt physically sick. The late nights. The secretive phone calls. The sudden work trips. The way Megan always lingered a little too long at our house during business meetings. 14 years of marriage, and my husband had been planning a life with his 26-year-old secretary. But that still didn't explain the drugs. Why would he plant drugs in my suitcase? Unless you wanted me arrested, I said, the words tumbling out as the horrifying truth unfolded in real time. You wanted me detained here in Hawaii far from home, so you could. I looked at Megan. So you could go on this trip with HER instead. With me locked up in some foreign airport jail, dealing with drug charges, you'd have weeks, maybe months, free and clear. No wife asking questions. No wife checking your phone. Just you and Megan, living it up on what was supposed to be your anniversary trip. Claire, that's insane, Richard said, but his voice had no conviction left in it. He sounded like a man who knew the game was already over. Then explain the second bag, Richard, I said, my voice rising. Explain why there's an identical bag of drugs in Megan's suitcase too. Because I sure didn't put that one there. Silence. The TSA agents were now speaking quietly into their radios, and I could see more security personnel approaching from both ends of the terminal. This was escalating fast, and not in the direction Richard had planned for either of us. I think, the lead agent said carefully, looking between the 3 of us, we're going to need everyone to come with us. All 3 of you. As they led us toward a side room, away from the gawking crowd, Away from the cameras of curious tourists filming the chaos on their phones, Richard leaned close to me. His voice low and venomous, a tone I had never heard him use before in 14 years of marriage. "You shouldn't have moved it, Claire," he whispered. "You have no idea what you just did." I felt a chill run down my spine, because in that moment, I realized this wasn't just about an affair anymore. This was something much, much bigger. And whatever Richard had gotten himself into, I had just walked us both straight into the middle of it. The side room was small, windowless, and smelled like stale coffee. Two security officers sat us in separate plastic chairs along the wall, me on one end, Megan in the middle, Richard on the other end, deliberately separated so we couldn't talk. A federal agent in a navy polo with a badge clipped to his belt walked in carrying a laptop, and behind him, two more officers wheeled in our suitcases on a cart, the bags of white powder now sealed in evidence pouches. "Before we go any further," the agent said, sitting down across from us, "I want to be very clear. Both of these substances have already been field tested. They came back positive for cocaine, approximately 200 grams each. That's enough for federal trafficking charges, not just possession." My stomach turned to ice. 200 grams. Federal charges. This wasn't some small mistake that could be explained away with an apology. "I didn't put anything in anyone's bag," Megan said immediately, her voice shaking. "I want a lawyer." "I'm not saying anything else without a lawyer." "That's your right," the agent said calmly. He turned to me. "Ma'am, you said you witnessed your husband placing an item in your suitcase 2 nights ago. Can you walk me through that again in detail?" So I did. I told him everything, how Richard had been distant for weeks, how I'd caught him fumbling near my suitcase in the closet, how I'd found the sealed bag hidden in a pair of rolled socks, how I'd moved it into what I believed was Megan's identical suitcase out of fear and panic. "And you didn't think to report this? Call the police. Tell someone before getting on a plane?" "I know how it sounds," I said, my voice cracking. But I was scared. I thought maybe I was wrong. I thought maybe it was something else. I didn't want to believe my husband would do something like that. I just wanted it out of my bag. The agent nodded slowly, typing notes. Then he turned to Richard. "Mr. Whitfield, your wife says she witnessed you hiding a package in her luggage. Care to respond?" Richard's hands were trembling. For 14 years, I had watched this man give boardroom presentations without breaking a sweat, negotiate million-dollar contracts with ice in his veins. Now he looked like a cornered animal. "I want a lawyer too," he said quietly. "Of course you do," I muttered. But here's where things took a turn I never expected. The agent's laptop chimed. He glanced at the screen, and something in his expression shifted, sharper, more focused. He turned the laptop slightly, reading something, then looked up at Richard with new interest. "Mr. Whitfield, you work for Caldwell Pharmaceutical Logistics, correct? As a regional operations director?" Richard's face went white. "Oh, yes. Yes, I do. And Ems, Foster," the agent said, turning to Megan. "You're his executive assistant. You've traveled with him, Houston, Miami, Phoenix, 11 times in the last 8 months, all booked under expedited corporate travel codes." Megan's mouth opened, but no words came out. The agent leaned back. "We've actually had Caldwell Logistics on a watch list for a few months now. Unusual shipping patterns. Discrepancies in inventory at 3 different distribution warehouses. We've been trying to figure out who inside the company was running product through personal travel, small amounts, under the radar, using employee luggage on domestic and international flights where security is sometimes less thorough than people think." I felt the blood drain from my face. "You think Richard is part of a drug trafficking operation?" I whispered. "I think," the agent said carefully, "that this trip today was supposed to be a transport run. And I think Mrs. Whitfield's bag was selected because, as the wife of a company director, it would draw far less suspicion than an employee's luggage. Standard procedure." It hit me like a physical blow. Richard hadn't just been planning to frame me for an affair-driven setup. He'd been using Me, his own wife, as a drug mule. The anniversary trip was never about us. It was a cover, a shipment. And when I found the package and moved it into Megan's bag instead, I had unknowingly disrupted whatever plan he had, possibly saving myself from being arrested as the unwitting carrier, while accidentally exposing both bags to security at the same time. "Wait," Megan said suddenly, looking at Richard with horror dawning across her face. Wait, you told me your bag was the one with the special item. You said it was MY job just to carry MY half through customs in Honolulu and hand it off to someone at a hotel. You never said anything about Claire's bag having one too. Megan, shut up, Richard hissed. No, she shouted, standing up. You told me this was a any time thing. You said you needed the money for the divorce lawyers, that once this was done, we'd be free, we'd start over. She stopped, realizing what she just confessed in front of a federal agent. The room went deathly silent. The agent slowly closed his laptop. Mr. Whitfield Ems. Foster, I think we're going to need you both to come with us for formal questioning. Separately. He turned to me, his expression softening slightly. Mrs. Whitfield, given what you've told us and what's just been confirmed, it sounds like you may have unknowingly walked into something much larger than a marital dispute. We're going to need a formal statement from you as well, but as a witness, not a suspect. Relief flooded through me, but it was short-lived, because as two officers moved to handcuff Richard, he turned to look at me one last time, and what he said next made my blood run cold. This isn't over, Claire. You think exposing me here fixes anything? You don't know who else is involved in this. And now, they know your name too. I didn't sleep that night. The federal agents had taken our statements separately, confiscated our phones for forensic review, and put Megan and Richard into custody pending formal charges. I was released, technically a witness, not a suspect, but they made it very clear I wasn't free to fly home just yet. Not until they understood the full scope of what Richard had been involved in, and not until they figured out exactly what he meant by, they know your name too. I was placed in a hotel near the airport, with two plainclothes agents stationed in the lobby. Officially, it was for my protection, while the investigation continued. Unofficially, I understood the message. Someone out there might come looking for me, and the FBI wanted to know who. I sat on the edge of that hotel bed at 2 a.m., staring at the wall, replaying everything. 14 years. 14 years of birthdays, holidays, late-night arguments about money. The 3 miscarriages we went through together before deciding not to try for kids anymore. The way he used to bring me coffee in bed every Sunday morning without me even asking. How much of that had been real? Had any of it? The next morning, a woman named Agent Patricia Reyes sat down across from me in a small conference room at the local FBI field office. She had kind eyes, but a no-nonsense voice. The kind of woman who'd clearly seen 100 broken marriages unravel into criminal investigations. Mrs. Whitfield, I want to walk you through what we found so far, she said, sliding a folder across the table. And I want to be honest with you, because I think you deserve that, given everything you've been through in the last 24 hours. Inside the folder were printouts, bank statements, shipping manifests, text message logs pulled from Richard's phone. Your husband has been part of a smuggling operation for approximately 14 months, Agent Reyes explained. Caldwell Pharmaceutical Logistics has legitimate shipping routes between the mainland and several island distribution centers, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, Guam. Someone inside the company figured out how to exploit gaps in those routes, using employee personal travel as a secondary smuggling channel. Small quantities, frequent runs, low individual risk. Richard wasn't the mastermind, but he was a key facilitator. He recruited Megan about 8 months ago. Recruited her how? I asked, my voice flat. Agent Reyes hesitated, then continued. Financially. Megan had significant student loan debt and a sick parent with mounting medical bills. Richard offered her an arrangement. Money in exchange for occasional favors, carrying packages during work trips. The affair came later, according to her statement. She claims it started as something almost transactional, then became emotional over time. I felt a strange numbness wash over me. Somehow, hearing it laid out like this, cold, factual, almost clinical, was worse than if Richard had simply cheated on me with someone he loved. He hadn't fallen for Megan because of some grand passion. He'd manipulated a vulnerable young woman into a criminal operation, then started sleeping with her on top of it. 2 betrayals layered on top of each other, both rooted in the same selfish core. And what about this trip? I asked. Was I always supposed to be a mule? Without knowing it. Agent Reyes nodded grimly. Based on what we've recovered from his messages, yes. There was a planned pickup in Honolulu. Someone was supposed to retrieve the package from your luggage at a specific hotel. No questions asked. While you were none the wiser. You'd fly home in a few days completely unaware you'd been used as a courier. But then I found it, I said slowly, putting the pieces together out loud. And I moved it, which meant HIS plan for me fell apart. But Megan's bag, which already had its OWN package, suddenly had TWO. And when security flagged mine as empty of anything suspicious, but flagged hers with double the product, it triggered an anomaly. Agent Reyes finished. Two identical packages discovered simultaneously, in two different bags, both connected to the same traveling party. It was exactly the kind of red flag that gets immediate escalation. If you hadn't moved that bag, Mrs. Whitfield, there's a very real chance you would have been arrested in Honolulu for trafficking. And Richard would have had a clean alibi the entire time, since his bag would have come up clean. I sat back in my chair, absorbing the weight of what she was saying. My instinct, born purely from fear and suspicion, with no real plan behind it, had accidentally unraveled the entire operation. If I had done nothing, if I had simply trusted my husband like I had for 14 years, I would be sitting in a Honolulu detention facility right now, facing federal trafficking charges. While Richard and Megan flew off to start their new life together using money built on my unwitting incarceration. There's something else, Agent Reyes said, her tone shifting, becoming more serious. Richard's comment to you about they knowing your name. We've identified at least one other individual connected to this network, someone higher up the chain than Richard. Someone we haven't been able to locate yet. Based on the messages we recovered, this person was already aware of the plan involving your luggage. Which means, she paused, choosing her words carefully. Which means there's a strong possibility this person believes you were a willing participant, or at the very least, someone with knowledge of the operation who could expose them. And right now, we have no idea what they might do with that information. Or with you. My blood went cold. Mrs. Whitfield, she said, we need to talk about protective custody. Because Richard might be the least dangerous person in this entire situation right now. Part 5. 1,000 words. Protective custody. The words sat in my chest like a stone. I sat there in that sterile little office, 3,000 miles from home, and realized I had no idea who I could even call. My parents lived in Ohio. My sister was on a cruise somewhere in the Caribbean, completely unreachable. And the one person I'd always turned to in moments of crisis, for 14 years, was the same man who had tried to use me as a drug mule and frame me for trafficking so he could run off with his secretary. How long would I need to be in protective custody? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. That depends on how quickly we can identify and locate this other individual, Agent Reyes said. Could be days. Could be a few weeks. We'll fly you somewhere secure, away from Hawaii, away from Denver, until we have a clearer picture. I closed my eyes. Days ago, I'd been packing for what I thought was a romantic anniversary trip. Now I was being told I might need to disappear for weeks because of a criminal network my husband had dragged me into without my knowledge. But then something occurred to me. Wait, I said slowly. If this person, whoever's above Richard, thinks I'm a willing participant who could expose them, what if I could help you find them? What if, instead of hiding, I could actually be useful? Agent Reyes raised an eyebrow. What are you thinking, Mrs. Whitfield? Richard's phone, I said. You said you recovered messages. Are there any from someone using a name or number you haven't identified yet? Someone who communicated directly about the arrangement? She hesitated, then nodded slowly. There's a contact saved simply as M. Encrypted messaging app. We've been trying to trace the number, but it's routed through several proxy servers. Whoever it is, they're careful. What if, I said, my heart pounding, I sent a message from Richard's phone? Pretending to be him? Just enough to get a reaction to see if M responds, maybe even agrees to a meeting? You'd be right there, monitoring everything. I wouldn't be in danger because you'd control the entire situation. Agent Reyes studied me for a long moment. That's an aggressive idea for someone who, 24 hours ago, found out her husband was using her as a drug mule. With respect, Agent Reyes, I said, and for the first time in 2 days, I felt something other than fear or grief. I felt anger, clean and clear. I spent 14 years being lied to by a man I trusted completely. I'm done being someone things just happen to. If there's a way to end this, really end it, so I'm not looking over my shoulder for the rest of my life, I want to be part of that. It took 2 days of careful planning. The FBI's tech team cloned Richard's phone, preserving his messaging history and his exact communication patterns, even his typing habits, the abbreviations he used, the emojis. Agent Reyes coached me on what to say, how to phrase things so M wouldn't suspect anything was wrong. The message I sent, posing as Richard, was simple. Wife caused a problem at security. Both packages flagged. Need to talk before this gets worse. Can you meet tonight, the usual place? The response came back 40 minutes later. 3 words. You know the risk. Then a location. A parking structure near Waikiki, level 3, 11 p.m. That night was the longest night of my life. I sat in an FBI surveillance van 2 blocks away, watching a live feed from hidden cameras as agents positioned themselves throughout the parking structure, disguised as maintenance workers, security guards, even a couple pretending to argue near the elevators. At 11:04 p.m., a black SUV pulled into level 3. A man got out, mid-50s, expensive suit, moving with the kind of confidence that comes from years of never being caught. He walked toward the designated meeting spot, scanning the area, clearly expecting to see Richard. Federal agents. Hands where we can see them. The man bolted, but he didn't get far. Within seconds, he was on the ground, cuffed, agents swarming from every direction. I watched it all happen on the screen in front of me, my hands shaking, tears streaming down my face, not from fear this time, but something closer to release. His name, we later learned, was Marcus Ellery, a senior executive at Caldwell Pharmaceutical Logistics, the true architect of the entire smuggling operation. Richard had simply been a useful pawn, expendable the moment things went wrong. The same was true for Megan. Marcus's arrest, combined with the evidence already gathered, brought the entire operation crashing down. 7 arrests across 3 states within 72 hours. 3 weeks later, I sat in a small courtroom in Denver, watching as Richard, pale, gaunt, a shadow of the confident man I'd married, pleaded guilty to federal drug trafficking and conspiracy charges in exchange for a reduced sentence. 12 years. Megan, given her cooperation and the circumstances of her involvement, received a much lighter sentence, 18 months, with a possibility of early release for good behavior. I divorced Richard the same month his sentencing was finalized. I didn't take a cent from him beyond what was legally mine, the house, which I sold within 2 months, unable to stand living in those rooms a moment longer. People ask me sometimes if I regret what I did, moving that bag, setting off that chain of events that destroyed my marriage and exposed a criminal network I never asked to be part of. I tell them the truth. My marriage was already destroyed. I just didn't know it yet. What I do know is this: that moment of instinct, that split-second decision born from fear and suspicion, didn't break my life apart. It saved it. And for the first time in 14 years, I finally feel like my life is actually completely my own.